Hey, it's Steve. In this video, I'm going to show you how I built this little piece of removable scenery in just 25 minutes that I can use on a 2x4 foot N scale project layout, as well as take it off and use it for some tabletop gaming. So I've been exploring the idea of making things more modular on small model railroads because a lot of times you're limited in space of what you can put on that layout, but maybe you can make the things more modular and interchangeable. So if you want different industries, different looks to the layout, different seasons over time, make all these pieces easily removable, be able to swap them out, change up the look of your layout over time, change out the industries you have, that kind of thing. But maybe if you're going to do that, you can also make these things usable for something else. And so, having something like this where I could pop it off the layout, allow it to be used in a gaming situation for an evening, can give you a lot more use out of things you might want to create. So anyway, let's take a look at how I built this little modular scenery piece. Okay, so I started a timer on my iPad so you can keep track of how long I was actually spending building this scenery piece. And so I took a piece of foam that I had already carved to the proper size and shape to fit the area on the layout that I was building it for. And then I carved a few little holes on the bottom and glued in a few neodymium magnets that would allow me to attach this piece magnetically to the 2x4 foot N scale project layout. So I just glued those in with some tacky glue, and then I just put some masking tape on top of that because I didn't want to obviously glue this to the cardboard while I was working on the scenery on the other side of it. So with that done, I flipped the piece over and painted everything with a mix of both glue and paint. So I took some brown paint, poured on some white glue, and just covered everything with a thick layer of that paint and glue mix. And directly on top of that, I just took some Woodland Scenics Earth Blend and put that everywhere on top as my initial scenery base. I sprayed everything down with some rubbing alcohol as a wetting agent and then came back with the diluted matte medium and soaked everything with that to make sure it was securely attached, or at least it would be securely attached when it dried. And while that was still wet, I took some Woodland Scenic Static Grass, put it in the hopper of my static grass applicator, and covered everything with a solid layer of that static grass to give a second layer of scenery texture to this little project. Now, normally at this point, I would wait for this to dry, so I wouldn't mess everything up as I progressed to additional layers of scenery. But again, trying to get this done as fast as possible, I went straight to taking some clump foliage and placing that all over the middle area of this little piece of foam scenery. So I just pushed those pieces of clump foliage into the existing scenery and kind of hard enough to kind of get them into that glue and paint mix that was still quite wet to help secure them from the bottom. And then again, I sprayed everything down with alcohol from the top, added another soaking of diluted matte medium to make sure that those pieces of foam were going to be securely attached and not fall off once everything dried. So that pretty much wrapped up the base layers for this scenery project. And so then I took pieces of light green fine leaf foliage, again from Woodland Scenics, and used those as trees for this piece of scenery. And you could make your own with seafoam or super tree material and basically save more money that way. But so again, trying to save as much time as possible, I just used the ready-made Woodland Scenics fine leaf foliage and took pieces that were the right size trees that I needed for this project, broke those off, and then added some tacky glue to the bottom of those, poked a hole in the scenery foam base with a screwdriver, and then just pressed those trees into that hole so they would be securely attached. And then I kind of just worked my way around doing a couple additional trees into the foam itself, and then also just taking chunks of that fine leaf foliage and kind of embedding it into the foam that was already there and kind of intertwining it with the branches of the trees I had embedded in the foam too. So kind of just getting everything intertwined together. So when I glued everything would be sort of attached to each other piece, and all the pieces would be glued to each other as well as to the foam as well as to the base to make everything nice and secure. So that was pretty much all I needed to do. So once this was done, again, I sprayed everything down with rubbing alcohol and soaked everything with more diluted matte medium. This way, again, with the multiple layers of the glue mix on there, everything was going to be really securely attached. I wasn't going to be worrying about everything falling off. The other thing that using all this matte medium on there is that it does just coat everything with that layer of glue, and that also adds additional strength and structure to everything and makes it a little bit more resilient to handling. And because I did mess up everything a little bit on the edges, just handling things, I took the static grass applicator and tried to go around the edges and put on a little bit more static grass on those edges. There were some spots where I had rubbed off some of the grass and foam and so forth, and so I touched those up the best that I could. And so then I just took a spatula and lifted everything up and put it on another piece of cardboard to dry. So only about 24 minutes start to finish to make this piece of scenery. Obviously, it took a while to dry, but just building it itself, very, very fast to do. So once everything was dry, I came back and I needed to have something for those magnets to attach themselves to on the 2x4 foot layout. So what I did was just take some small wood screws and I just attached those to the magnets. So the head of the screw would be attached by the magnet. And then I just pushed down on that piece of scenery so the tips of those screws would leave marks in the wooden base of the scenery. Then I could take the screws off of the magnets and just screw them in place on the layout. And then I had perfectly aligned screws to the magnets on the piece of scenery, thus allowing it to snap in place very, very easily on the layout, but also very easy to remove as well. You can just grab the side of the scenery piece, pull it off, and use it for something else, or just swap it out with a different piece of scenery if you want to change up the look. So anyway, I'm trying to do a lot more on this modular interchangeable idea. I've even started working on some much bigger pieces that can be swapped out. I'm working on building a town module. This is the top part of that 2x4 foot layout, but it'll be able to be swapped out with, in this case, a forested hill. I might do some other things as well. So again, just the idea that you can easily change up the look of your layout and have some different options to keep it more interesting for a longer period of time, so you don't build the layout and then, a year later want to tear it up and redo it and do something different. Maybe you can just change out pieces very easily or keep building different pieces that will fit on that layout to allow you to do a lot of different things in the same space over time. So anyway, that's the ideas I'm kind of looking at. And again, if you can repurpose stuff, make things easily removable to where you can use it for gaming or other things as well. Maybe little dioramas that you can have on your shelf, put it on the layout, take it off, make it a little display, those kinds of things. Again, I'm trying to just play around, see what I can come up with, and be a little creative, not just in the way things look, but how things are actually assembled and that kind of thing as well. So anyway, that's all for now, and thanks for watching. Bye.